This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at pm-podcast.com or send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. Hello and welcome to this premium episode number 185. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast. It's nice to have you with us. In this premium episode, we are going to continue to develop project leadership skills, but not just anybody's skills. We are focusing on what you and I can do as project leaders in order to enable our own project team members to take more leadership responsibilities. After all, one important trait of a project leader is that she or he helps others on the road to leadership. My guest is Andy Kaufman, PMP from the Institute for Leadership and Excellence and Development. That's i-leadonline.com. In the last episode, all our premium listeners, and that's you in case you're wondering, received a free copy of his 2 leadership appraisal worksheets. If you haven't seen those yet, then please take another look at episode 184 and look for these PDF documents. For this interview on team leadership development here, Andy is offering you his team charter worksheet. So download this PDF document and use it the next time that you have a team kick-off meeting. And now, let's push those team members out of the nest and see if they can fly as leaders. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview. Today with Andy Kaufman, international speaker, author, and executive coach.
Hello, Andy, and welcome back to our Project Leadership series.
Thank you, Cornelius. It's a real pleasure.
So in our first interview, we focused on developing our personal leadership skills. And we said that in this interview, we now want to focus on developing our teams and their leadership skills. So whose skills are we going to be developing in this interview?
You know, the way I like to look at it, and I'll position it for this interview, is we have to develop the team, because just because we put people together on a team doesn't make them a team, right? And so it's our ability as project leaders to develop the team, and a key part of that then is also developing their leadership skills. So it's really both.
Okay, but just because you put people together in a team, that's not going to mean that they're going to be acting like a team. So how, as a leader then, do you begin to develop an effective team?
You know, there is probably not one single best way, but I really appreciate the wisdom of the ages here. And Bruce Tuckman, man, it must have been back in the 60s, came up with Tuckman's theory of teams. You know, most people will have heard of it, that teams go from forming, storming, norming, performing. I seem to recall years ago you did at the end of your cast and we have this or whatever, and you said you add blaming at the end of that. I remember that from a couple of years ago. But you know, the big message for project leaders out of that is I found there's a lot of wisdom in what Tuckman found there. That you know we're going to put people together on this project team. We will form it, and we need to do that well. But we need to expect the storm. We need to expect that there will be problems, whether it's understanding roles and responsibilities, all kinds of things that can happen. And what I find is too often we don't expect it. And so just expect it. There will be some conflict. There are going to be some issues. Expect it. And then the goal is to get through that storm as soon as possible.
Many of our listeners are seasoned project managers. Some of them, however, they're junior project managers. So at some point, you know, they're going to be given their first project team. Yeah. And then they're going to be standing there going, okay, I have these 6 people here in front of me and they expect me now to lead this team. Do you have any tips for them? What should the first things be that a new team leader focuses on with the team?
I had a really interesting discussion with Jody Goldberg. She blogs on Harvard Business Review, and she just released a book in 2011 called Great on the Job. And one of the things she said was, a lot of times people that are new in a role, whether they're new for the very first time or it's a new role at a company where they weren't at before. But regardless, they're new. And she says, one of the problems is we think we can't ask for help. Because if we ask for help, then we're showing that we're weak. And we need to show that we're not weak. And what I find is, in fact, what she talks about in her book, Great on the Job, is no. And you have to be careful on how you ask for help. I mean, you have to do your part of it for sure. But the advice that I would give somebody who's a new project leader is network with other people that have been doing it longer. I am amazed at how much people are willing to help. And so, for example, what are some key things you do in a kickoff meeting? Don't try to invent it, right? Just figure out what are some other things they've done? What are some landmines that you found that you've stepped on, or talk to other people? Do you know the people on these teams? Are there some dynamics there that I need to know about? I mean, I've had people tell me when I didn't know the people about how these two people don't get along, or there's some history there going in, so I'm not blind. So I would strongly recommend, whether you call it networking, whether you call it relationship building, find people who are good at running teams and get to know them really well. And then beyond that, there are just great resources out there, whether you call it podcasts, subscribe to books that talk about, or subscribe to blogs that talk about leading teams. There's just so many resources out there that don't necessarily require people to sign up for a class.
And I think this is good advice not only for junior project managers, this is also good advice for senior project managers, because, once you've led a team, 10, 15, 20 times on a project, you are set in your ways. This is how I do it, and this is the way it works, and this is the way I am, and, you have a blindfold on almost.
Yeah.
And reaching out to others around you, other project managers, and saying, hey, come on, sit into my project, the next team meeting, audit it. Tell me what it is that I'm doing well. Tell me what it is that I'm not doing so well, where I could improve.
Yeah.
That is good advice, even for a very seasoned project manager who thinks I have everything down pat. I've done this so many times.
Yeah.
No, because, a new perspective might help you improve.
Yeah, so true. Because somebody could run relatively small projects, but now they're getting a bigger one. Go talk to somebody that runs programs. There's something I don't do this as consistently as I should, Cornelius. So I don't want to sound like I do it perfectly, but I'm always looking for who is it that's 5 or 10 years ahead of me. What is it they're doing? We can all apply that to say, what is it that they do to manage a program? How can I learn some of those things now for my project? I think you're right. I think that's great advice, regardless of where people are on the spectrum.
We mentioned earlier that you have a leadership class, you do presentations, keynotes, workshops, and in these workshops, one of the things I heard you say is that you take exception to the statement that people say, in order to have the basis for an effective team members have to trust each other. It's the foundation of a good team.
Right.
Why do you take exception to that?
Well, it's still one of my favorite books. It's Patrick Lencioni's book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He shows it as trust at the base. And Lencioni's a brilliant guy. So the last thing I want to say is he doesn't have it right. But this is what I found is, can you really sit down with a team, Cornelius, and say, all right, everybody, let's hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and trust each other, right? I know it's key. Obviously, trust is key. We have to have it there. But I don't know if it's quite that simple. And I mean, I remember I was at a company, and they said, all right, we're going to develop trust. And I don't know, how's that going to be? They said, all right, pair off. One of you, close your eyes and flex your arm, almost like I was going to flex a bicep. Pull your arm up. And the other person's going to hold onto your elbow and lead you around the room while you have your eyes closed, and this will develop trust. I have to tell you, Cornelius, the whole time I had my eyes closed walking around the room, I'm thinking, this is the stupidest exercise I've ever gone through, I didn't develop trust. And so I think when we think of that as the base, it is important, but what has to be there to establish trust? And there are many brilliant people that have spent time thinking about this. And what I find is that from a team perspective, so specifically for project leaders, if we try to apply this, I call it purpose. It has to start with purpose. And what I mean by that is, if we don't know why we're doing this project, if we don't know how our team fits into maybe the overall project structure, the context overall, if we don't understand how what we do impacts the business, if we don't understand, maybe roles and responsibilities, that's part of purpose. If we don't understand that, it's hard for me to trust. And so I have it start with purpose. And then, if you think of it as concentric rings, that the next ring out would be accountability. And because if, as the project leader, if I don't hold myself accountable, and if I don't hold people on the team accountable to what we've agreed on, once again, I find that impacts trust. And then, there's more in the model in the class, but trust is that next ring. And the primary components of trust come down to ability, intent, and integrity. Do I have the ability? Like I could say, Cornelius, I'm going to guarantee that we're going to triple the number of premium subscribers you have because of what we're going to give away. Yeah, I don't have the ability to do that. So you wouldn't trust me because of that. Intent. Do I believe that when I, as a project leader, do people believe that I have their best intentions when I'm doing things? And then integrity, do I follow up on what I do? One of my mentors said, success in business comes down to the F word, Cornelius, and that is follow up. Will I follow up? Will I do what I say? Integrity, and all of those things go into building trust. We don't start with trust. We start with those things, and the result is trust. That's why I take exception to it.
I get it. Okay. You're still saying trust is needed. It's the basis of a good team, but you cannot just simply teach a team how to trust each other. You have to do it differently. Right. You have to address trust from various angles. Yes. And give them the appropriate support, know what we're doing, start growing together as a team, and that will bring the trust. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So a trust development exercise. I've gone through those as well. Fall backwards and I'll catch you. Yeah. Okay.
I promise, Cornelius, I'll catch you. I promise.
I remember once there was one on The Simpsons where Marge and her lovely husband did that. And of course, he never caught her. He just let her fall to the ground because they were donuts.
See, you can learn from The Simpsons on leadership skills.
Yeah. All right. Let's come back to developing the team and their leadership skills, because there's one thing that you do differently than the PMBOK guide. If you open up the PMBOK guide, it says, in order to start your project, you first need a project charter.
Right.
You say, you know what, that's fine, but consider creating a team charter as well. Right. So what is a team charter? Why is it important, and where can I get it?
Yeah. You know what? It is actually not contrary, I would say, to what PMI would talk about here, but it's especially for new teams that haven't worked together. Whether you call it a charter, it doesn't really matter what you call it. But what I find is, and the way I teach it in the class, is start with a purpose statement. And sometimes I get a little Dilbert-like response when I hear about purpose statements or mission statements. Something gets laminated up on a wall, but no one actually follows. But regardless of what you call it, people on the team need to know, why are we here? And a project charter should make that clear for the project. So this would be more for the team. Why is it that we exist? And make sure that it's clear. And just as with mission statements, you don't make it flowery. Just make it clear. Keep it concise. The second part of the team charter that I use is roles and responsibilities, which is actually a good PMI practice anyway. It's a good PMBOK practice, whether you call it a responsibility assignment matrix, a RACI chart or matrix, but making sure it's clear. It's unbelievable to me of how much harm we have in our projects when people don't know what they're supposed to do and they don't know their roles and responsibilities. That is just a key responsibility, not only for us as from the project perspective, but think about it from the team perspective. Take it a little bit broader, team player roles and responsibilities. I like RACI charts. I find they're very effective there. The third part is, what do we value? Now, sometimes when people are a little concerned about using values because they think that starts getting a little bit too personal, but what I find is, in fact, I'll even do this as a pop quiz with teams sometimes. Say, all right, what do we value as a team? And just let them kind of write things down individually. And it's interesting. They're all over the place. And it's really important that we know what is it that we value. And I actually encourage people, you actually get it in writing, whether you call it a team chart or something else. You get it in writing because what I find is, if I say, for example, we value respect, Let's say that. Right? Then when someone in a meeting is disrespectful to someone else, if I've already covered it with them, I can call back to that the reason why I'm having this conversation is we have a team value of respect. And I mean, there's all kinds of values that can come up. But the key is that they really be things that we value as a team as opposed to something that sounds good. I was training at a company and they had their values up on the wall, and one of them said, "Have fun." And I have to tell you, Cornelius, there was no fun happening at that company. so it's not just about coming up with bullet points for the sake of coming up with it, but things that we truly value, and we get agreement as a team that yes, these are the things that we value. And, and for example, the things like that of hitting our dates. That we take that as a key thing. We take those seriously. That could be something that we say we value. And then the last part of the team charter that I focus on is team key performance indicators, where they call them key performance indicators. It's a little bit along the lines of what the PMBOK guide would talk about as far as project objectives, things that are measurable. Basically what it does is it answers the question, how do we know we're successful as a team? What I find is we often don't ask that question often enough, Cornelius. What does success look like? Certainly we need it for our projects, but then we have to look at it as a team as well. How do we know we're successful? And I ran into as a chief information officer of one of the big 6 firms. Actually, I don't know if there's 6 or if it's the final 4, how many there are of those anymore.
2 left, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyway, he was one of the CIOs, and what he does is he has 2 sheets of paper. One is, these are the things you can expect of me. The other one is, this is what I expect of you. And I thought that was brilliant because, in fact, this whole team charter, what it's trying to do is to get rid of that ambiguity. Why, as a team, should we guess what the expectations are? These are the expectations. He took it a step further and said, this is what you can expect from me specifically as the leader. But even if you just do it at a team level, in fact, the outline that I have for the team charter, that document, we did it last interview. Let's do it for this one as well. Let's make that available to your premium subscribers if they want to download it and then customize it any way that they want. Get rid of some of those fields, add some fields. But what I find is there's just a lot of value in getting clarity as a team that this is what we're all about and why we're here.
All right, perfect. So the premium listeners are really getting a lot out of this here. In the first interview, they got the assessment, and now they're getting the team charter. Wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Great.
Right. So for everybody who has really paid close attention to the interview so far, we started out by saying, we want to show you how to develop the leadership skills of the people on your team. But if you listened closely, what we've talked about mostly so far is how to develop the team itself, how to make them come and grow together. So, Andy, beyond helping teams more effectively work together, which is what we've talked about so far, you also talk about the need to develop the leadership bandwidth of our teams. And I assume that means the leadership abilities of the individual people. And in your leadership workshops, you recommend, and this is a good one, you recommend creating an outlaw team?
Outlaw team.
Okay. Now, what is the idea of an outlaw team? What does this have to do with leadership? And how on earth does this help the leadership skills of, let's pick the most obvious one, Joe, my software development engineer who's on my project?
Right. Excellent. I love how you personalize that. This is many years back when I created my first outlaw team. And this is how it started. I seem to recall it was over a Christmas holiday. So there, some time away from work. I was reading this book. It had to do with origins of the universe. It wasn't a business book at all, but basically it started talking about second law of thermodynamics. Now, I don't know about you, Cornelius. I'm not like I'm not a physicist, but I was intrigued by the concept, the idea of the second law of thermodynamics.
Wait. Is that... No, I don't recall it. No, that's not the thermodynamics. I was thinking of Newton's second law, but okay.
Well, let's go with that one anyway. but basically the idea is
a body in motion stays in motion.
That's one of those, I believe. But it's basically in a closed system that entropy increases over time, right? So I had to look up, what is entropy? But basically what it's saying is things go from order to disorder. Disorder is basically what the law says. And you know what? Even though the book had nothing to do with business, I couldn't help but think about my teams and my projects. Because you know what I see? I see entropy in organizations and projects all the time. Maybe for an organization, a strategy seemed to make sense. But then over time, we took our eye off the strategy. Maybe technology, it was a good idea at a time, but it doesn't scale as the organization grows. One of the favorite guys I ever had on my staff, his line was "Volume screws up everything," and it's true. That maybe it seemed good, but all of a sudden we're duct taping technology together instead of actually, that's entropy. And projects, plans that look good up front, but changes creep in. Basically, as I was reading this concept of entropy in the second law of thermodynamics kept coming up. Well, what I decided to do is I'm going to create a team, and it's going to be all about leadership. So it's basically a leadership development forum. It's not going to be a project status meeting. It is going to be a group of leaders. We'd meet once a month was the idea up front. And instead of talking about our projects, what we're going to do is we're going to hit a leadership topic. And I included my direct reports. At that time, my direct reports would not have included Joe, the software developer, but I included some of the people that had expressed interest in being, going to more of a leadership role in the future. So in that case, Joe would have been included. And so we'd get together and we'd focus on just one topic. Let's say it's negotiating or maybe managing time or listening skills. And we would spend time 60 minutes or less. In fact, for people first starting this, if you're concerned, I'd say, all right, just go for 30 minutes. I got to tell you, Cornelius, I was really concerned of how are these technical people going to like talking about leadership things. And this was the results. If I had to summarize the results, I had to kick people out of the room. I did. And I think part of it comes down to, have you ever gone out on a fishing boat? Cornelius, you're out there in California, right? So you're on the water maybe every once in a while. But if you get out on a fishing boat or on some sort of boat and the wind and the waves are kind of tossing the boat, you're starting to feel a little green, what are you supposed to do? Have you ever heard what you're supposed to do?
Look at the horizon.
That's exactly.
I don't have to actually do that because I don't get seasick, luckily.
Oh, you are the man. Well, you know what? For the rest of us that do, look to the horizon is exactly what you're supposed to do. And in my executive coaching and in the workshops, we call it horizon time. Too many of us on our projects, things go wrong on projects, right? I mean, one of my guys once, his line was, the project schedule's the schedule for exactly how the project will not go. That's how it happens sometimes. And things go wrong. There's stress. And the equivalent of horizon time is this outlaw time. What we did is we weren't talking about our projects. We were talking about these skills, these leadership skills, and people loved it. It gave them an opportunity to get their eyes off of the wind and the waves and off to the horizon. And so I found that developing this outlaw team, regardless of what you call it, it had big payoffs for us.
Right. And let me guess, at the end of our last interview, we talked about the leadership skills that we project managers need, influencing, conflict management, project management skills, problem solving, etc. There were 8 of them. And let me guess, these would be core themes that you bring into this outlaw team to discuss.
Absolutely. That would be exactly where I would start. And just, in fact, if somebody wanted to know, like, well, how do I get started? It'd be identify, and those are my 8. But maybe they want to supplement with something else that would be perhaps a hot issue for them at this time, maybe because of something that went wrong recently. But
perfect. I'd say let's end on this note here. Let's say somebody wants to start a outlaw team. How do they get started? What do they have to do in order to get this off the ground?
All right. So you know what you could do is, first of all, figure out what you're going to call it. I call it outlaw because of the law of thermodynamics, and it looks great on a room reservation that the outlaw team is meeting there. Like, what is that? So it had a little bit of an edge to it, But I mean, I've had I can't tell you the number of people that I've talked to, thousands of people on this topic, and I've gotten feedback. Sometimes they call it names from Star Wars and Star Trek. I mean, I've heard all kinds of different names, but it doesn't matter what you call it. But figure out who you're going to invite, and then what are those topics, like we talked about, and then find some articles. It could be out of Fast Company magazine or off their website, or I find that there are a lot of interesting articles on the Harvard Business Review blog, and you can get access to all those for free. And what I'll do is I'd recommend find one of those that's relevant to the topic you want to hit, print it out, bring it to the meeting. Don't expect that people are going to read it ahead of time. I found that they just won't do it. But in the meeting, maybe give 5 minutes, divide it up, and this is the rough outline I'd use: summarize, analyze, apply. And the idea to summarize is just ask people to say, all right, Joe, you read that first paragraph there. If you had to summarize what the author was saying, how would you put it in your own words? Okay. And so Joe would have to put it in his own words. Just by doing that, he had to think, right? And some synapses had to fire there to kind of understand it. And after we spent some time summarizing, then we'd say, all right, what is it? This would be the analyze. What is it that we agree with? And what is it that we don't agree with? I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that, frankly, it's just oversimplified. And so, what do we agree with? What do we disagree with? So that's the summarize, analyze. And then the last part is the apply, is how could we apply it here? And what I find is most of this is, by saying apply, it gets it out of the academic. And then we can look for ways to apply it. And I have to tell you, there's something powerful about the leader facilitating this, because there's the implied accountability. If I'm talking about this, I'm going to do these things as well. And over time, I have found there's some value in maybe rotating the facilitation, because that develops the facilitation skills of some of the people, but at least start with doing it. And if people have questions on this, they're certainly invited to send me an email and say, I want to talk more about that. But what I find is, don't over-engineer it. Find some free articles out there and just get started. And what my experience, and I'm saying not only off my own experience, but the experience that I get from countless number of people that have told me that have applied this, that it really works out great with their teams.
Excellent. So let's all go out there and create our very own outlaw team.
There you go.
Andy, thank you very much for coming back onto the program here today in our project leadership series and talking to us about how to develop our project team as a leader and how to help others to grow as project leaders through the outlaw teams. Thank you.
Cornelius, it's my pleasure. It's certainly something I'd love to spend time talking about. And I want to thank you for your support and even being a mentor in many ways to me over the years. So thank you very much.
And that was Andy Kaufman in our Project Leadership series. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. If you are a PMP or PGMP and you're looking for a simple but effective way to earn your PDUs, then why not do it in just the way you're doing it right now with a podcast, the PDU podcast to be precise. Get new webinars and at least one new PDU every month on autopilot. Stop by at pducast.com. That's pducast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. They say that faith will move mountains. Unfortunately, nothing will move project deadlines. Until next time.